Hey everyone! Before we dive into today's video, I have to say thank you to our sponsor, Keeps, an online subscription service that helps men keep their luscious head of hair. Sorry to any bears out there who were hoping for full body hair care. I don't know what I can do for you, but Keeps is just for your scalp. And Keep users can experience results within 6 months of starting treatment. Keep offers 24/7 care and support with a network of medical specialists there to advise and consult you on your hair goals, providing a routine that works for you, so you're getting doctor-recommended treatment without the need to go into an office. Your items are delivered straight to your door, hassle-free. So don't be a metaphorical bear as hair loss stops with Keeps. To get 50% off your first order, go to keeps.com/completionist or click the link in the box down below. That's keeps.com/completionist. Thank you to Keeps, and enjoy today's video. Horizon Zero Dawn was a standout title in 2017, even against the juggernaut that was known as The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. It was a breakout hit for its awesome main character Aloy, unique post-apocalypse that was visually interesting, and white-knuckle combat against some memorable robo-beasties. The developer, Guerrilla Games, essentially went from B-tier developer to A-list overnight. And now, 5 years later, here I am, completing the sequel, Horizon Forbidden West. Many sequels take a hard look at what made the original memorable and make major efforts to improve what came before it. Others take smaller steps forward, making minor tweaks and quality of life changes that have a lasting effect. Horizon Forbidden West is somewhere in the middle. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another brand new episode of The Completionist, where we don't just beat the games, we complete them. It's February, but you know what that means. Means all the games we've been hearing about since 2020 are finally coming out all at the same motherfucking time. I've been anticipating how Guerrilla Games would approach a follow-up to Zero Dawn for years now. And let me tell you, it's been a wild ride. So grab your bow and your spear and your specifically non-specific indigenous themed outfit as I complete Horizon Forbidden West. Yes!
All glory goes to the winner! Game over! Wake up! Last one standing wins!
Horizon Zero Dawn felt like a surprise hit, so much so that Aloy has become a flagship character for PlayStation. Even with only one mainline title, Horizon has made a massive impression. And so Forbidden West has been anticipated heavily these last few years. But to talk about the present, I'm gonna have to go back to the past for just a bit. And hey, it's a major theme of these two games, so this all tracks. 5 years between sequels is not a long time, especially considering the scope of the first game. Horizon Zero Dawn was Guerrilla Games' first attempt at making an open-world style action RPG. Known previously for the grim Killzone series, Horizon was a chance for Guerrilla Games to develop something completely fresh and stretch their creative impulses. They made something they described as exuberantly beautiful and made an effort to showcase themes of restorative beauty in a world ruined by mankind's worst impulses. The game's distinct look and surprisingly impactful story did a lot to help it stand out, but it was the creature design and combat that cemented Zero Dawn as a PlayStation 4 must-play. Guerrilla Games made a competent, for lack of a better word, Ubisoft-style open-world game, replete with crafting and question marks on a gradually filled-in map. But the addition of dangerous, hunt-worthy cybernetic fauna felt revolutionary. The game was supported months after release with the Frozen Wilds DLC, with an even higher difficulty set of trophies to go with it. Sony has gone all in on Horizon as a property, and even gave this game away for free during the height of the COVID pandemic in 2021, part of their play-at-home initiative. It's been wild to watch a fan base grow from essentially nothing into a group who have made Horizon Forbidden West one of the most anticipated PlayStation exclusives of all time. At the time the first one came out, I really appreciated how Sony and Guerrilla Games took massive risks with this new IP. I think Zero Dawn did a lot of things right, though I will say by the time I had finished completing the definitive edition, I was pretty worn down. The combat alone impressed me so much that I was able to overlook some of the pitfalls Zero Dawn falls prey to, like repetitive looting and crafting, and the main character who constantly narrates everything she's doing all the time. I gave Horizon Zero Dawn a rating of finish it, because though it was super fun to play, it was not that great to complete. I also remember making a big point of how I like that this game tells a full and complete story that doesn't require a sequel. So with that said, here we are now. Horizon Forbidden West is once again in an unenviable position of competing head-to-head against another tentpole release. Only instead of Zelda this time, it's Elden Ring, the next big From Software game. It's nothing to hold against Guerrilla though. It is true that Forbidden West was delayed from its original release window in 2021, but according to game director, and I'm totally going to ruin this name, here we go, Matthias de Jong, this delay was to prevent crunch and keep employees sane. Even without the delay, Forbidden West had its share of controversy. There was the slightly confusing pricing discrepancy between the PS4 and PS5 versions, which required Sony to backtrack and promise a free next-gen upgrade to players who purchased a PS4 disc. And then there were those who assumed upon announcement that this game would be a PlayStation 5 exclusive. However, it is in fact on both PS4 and PS5. I completed it on the PlayStation 5, but apparently playing even on a base PS4 is remarkably solid. The team did extra remote playtesting on the PS4 build, and it clearly paid off. And full disclosure, I've been playing this game for almost 3 weeks now.
And this game has launched with its fair share amount of bugs, both pre and post-launch, which we'll get to later on.
Aloy's hair still flies all over the place during cutscenes. But with that said, Forbidden West is easily one of the most gorgeous looking games out today. I was amazed to learn that this is only the third game ever to use the Decima engine. Character models and environments look incredible. I can't help but wonder what a full-on PlayStation 5 exclusive game built in this engine would look like. And since I am on the subject of the PS5 experience, I have to mention that using the DualSense in Forbidden West feels extremely cool. The way the triggers have dynamic resistances, and the fact that drawing your bow back sends a little rumble through your fingers is subtle, but it's kind of impossible now to imagine this game without it. This is hands down the best use of the DualSense I've seen so far, and it makes me very excited for the future of the tech. There will undoubtedly be people who feel like they have to rush through this game quickly because of FOMO, or because they have to clear their schedule so they can review the next big release. Hi, hello, yes, that's me, the Completionist. I've been playing both Elden Ring and Forbidden West for quite some time, and it just won't stop. Stop releasing new games, please. But I will say, Forbidden West is a game that really wants players to slow down. The narrative starts off slowly, much like Zero Dawn, and to be clear, I am going to have to spoil some parts of Zero Dawn in the course of talking about this sequel, because this game literally takes place after the final events of Zero Dawn, so you've been warned. Spoilers for a game that you should have already played if you're watching this video. The end of Zero Dawn had Aloy essentially saving the world from an evil AI named Hades, after discovering that she, Aloy, is a genetic replica of Elizabeth Sobek, a brilliant scientist. Aloy takes on the burden of being the chosen one, searching the land for a backup of the Gaia program that only she has access to, as she is the genetic key that can reboot everything on Earth. She's also searching for a solution to a strange red blight that's killing all of the organic life on the land. She must push west into Tanakh territory to find the answers she needs and continue growing into the savior role that she must become. Now, this is a narrative that takes a few hours to get rolling into. I didn't even find myself really in the Forbidden West for something like the first 5 or 6 hours of the game. Many of the features teased in the trailers, like a hard light hang glider and beachy environments, do take some time to show up. Forbidden West really wants players to walk before they can run, which might feel a little frustrating to people who have just played Zero Dawn to prepare for this release. The overall basic gameplay cycle from the first game carries over here. This is still a big, crunchy, third-person action game. Aloy uses weapons like slings and tripwires, and most importantly, bows, to hunt down these metal beasts. She must scavenge machine parts to craft newer, better weapons and armor. Aloy uses her futuristic focus to scan the environment for climbable paths and objects of interest. She can also tag enemies and see their weak points, their walking paths, and even targets certain parts of enemies to farm for things. Now, at first, this game feels like an iterative next step, right? Rather than a full-on reimagining, Forbidden West doubles down on the base game and adds a dash of complexity to the systems at hand. It's always a rush for me to try to complete a game like this before anyone else has had the chance to do so. It's like my own little private mad scientist lab of completion. With that said, there is a lot to do in Forbidden West. Aside from the main narrative, there are dozens of side quests and errands to clear. And then there are activities like the arena challenges where I had to take on increasingly tough battles against the hardest enemies in this game. Hunting grounds do make a return where I had to complete different difficult tasks under an increasingly short timer. We also got robo racing, aka gauntlet runs, so we're officially one step closer to PlayStation All-Stars Kart. There are plenty of collectibles scattered across this giant map, and all the above count towards in-game completion. And of course, it wouldn't be a modern open world game with the addition of a game within this game. In this case, a chess-like board game called Machine Strike, which has its own collectible pieces to find and use. I think the additions to this sequel give it a stronger identity than the first game had. I'll admit, when I first started playing this game, I thought it felt like Horizon Zero Dawn 1.5, but by the time I completed the game, including earning all 59 trophies and hitting that 100% in-game completion, I saw the game for the true sequel that it is. Everything from gameplay to visuals to story has been given an intensive tune-up that absolutely impacts the completion experience.
In the first few hours of Horizon Forbidden West, I thought the game lacked the essence of a true sequel. But despite many returning systems, the way this game revamps mechanics and other aspects make it a much more engaging completion experience than the first. It takes its time when getting there, but when Forbidden West carves out new territory, it sings. At the very beginning of the game, probably within the first 20 minutes or so, Aloy receives a new tool, the Pullcaster. Essentially, it's a grappling hook. This device allows Aloy to zip up to climbing points she couldn't reach otherwise, and rip open vents like she's in Arkham Asylum. It's incredibly smart that Guerrilla gives this to the player right up front, because otherwise, I found the start of Forbidden West extremely medium. I was reminded heavily by my initial impressions of Zero Dawn at first. The opening area of Zero Dawn is huge, but not all that exciting, and I'd argue that the game doesn't really kick off until players venture out of Nora territory. It's kind of the same in Forbidden West. Yes, it's lush, it's gorgeous, that descent into the valley in the mining town of Chainscrape is jaw-dropping. But if you're going around completing everything you can given the first opportunity, like I did, you might get the impression that this game may be dull. Aloy starts this adventure like it's a Metroid game, where she's lost most, if not all, of her skills and gear from the first game, and has to build it all back up from scratch. I get it, you can't have all your toys right up front, but the way this disempowerment is explained in a single tossed off line of dialogue in a cutscene struck me as kind of funny. But look a little closer and you'll see that there are actually so many changes right out of the gate that promise a deeper experience. For instance, Forbidden West has massively expanded skill trees that have a greater influence on how you actually play the game. Now, the first had 3 major branches, but the skills I learned didn't exactly ignite my imagination. In the sequel, the skill tree has been given a major overhaul, and once I invested in a few specific skills, it almost completely changed my opinion for the better. For anyone who played Zero Dawn, I think we can all agree that Aloy's melee combat skills were a little lackluster, and that's on purpose. You're not supposed to go in there with your spear and just bash the shit out of everything. When I completed that game, I mostly relied on the rope caster and fire arrows, and of course, overriding machines whenever I could. I never really felt like I could get up close and personal and play super aggressively. Forbidden West let me do that with the revamped melee combat system and the addition of Valor moves. In the first game, Aloy essentially had 2 spear attacks, light and heavy, but here, I had full-on unlockable combos that reminded me a little bit of God of War. In fact, with the fully unlocked warrior skill tree, almost every single hit has a combat extension that feels extremely satisfying to pull off. I had way more options available to me in almost every combat scenario, against humans or machines. Battling humans was a snap once I unlocked the Destroyer skill, which just shreds people. Giving the player more options helps make the game feel really expansive and plays more into the role-playing side of things. We're all playing Aloy, but my Aloy is probably going to be different than yours, at least until we unlock every skill. Players can even change Aloy's appearance with armor dyes and face paint. I think the armor design in general looks incredible, and even though I didn't mess around with its customization too much, it's one more way players can put a personal stamp on their experience. There are plenty of new combat techniques for the more aggressively inclined. I could basically charge up my spear with kinetic energy by landing melee hits, then transfer that energy to an enemy with another attack. Then I'd cap the whole thing off by shooting the energy I had just transferred over. Combined with new tools like the smoke bomb, and I could basically play Aloy like a ninja assassin, just something I didn't know I needed. The melee combat is a vast improvement over the original. However, Guerrilla added more than just melee combos. Every skill tree gives boosts to specific types of weapons, so it behooves the player to earn as many skill points as possible. There are also Valor moves, which require the player to unlock 3 skills surrounding the move on the skill tree. And these moves are incredibly useful, letting me do things like instantly cloaking myself Predator style. I particularly love the Radial Blast, which is pretty much as awesome and as powerful as it sounds. My only real complaint is that you can't really respec once you start purchasing skills. Skill points are abundant, but I'd say spend a little time going through each branch on each of the 6 skill trees before putting points down. You might start the game being in love with traps and stealth, but when you want to change up your playstyle, you'll have to spend some time grinding for new skill points. On top of just unlocking them via quests or certain errands, most skills can be improved by increasing the levels of Aloy herself. Sometimes certain gear equipped will also increase the level as well. I'm kind of mixed on Forbidden West's approach to weapons. Not the fact that there are new weapons to mess around with. Those rule, especially the spike thrower and the shredder gauntlet, which looks like a piece of high ally equipment. Something that carried over from the first game is that once you're out in the main part of the game, you can essentially purchase any weapon you want, from traders in towns or out in the field. The game doesn't really funnel you towards anything in particular. And this is kind of both good and bad. Players have the freedom to find something they like, but there are also weapons that I barely used at all because around the corner was a way better weapon. From a completionist standpoint, I was never compelled to really invest in upgrading my weapons until I got the legendary class ones. Every weapon has so many different elemental varieties that it wasn't until the very late game that I found legendary gear that made me feel comfortable in investing in them. Every weapon has an upgrade path with super different perks, and most of those upgrades required me to farm specific loot from certain enemies. And that's all fine. Use the weapons to kill the robots and use their parts to craft better weapons. This is a really satisfying loop. But for some gear, particularly traps and potion pouches, I'd have to gather bones and skins from wildlife. That's right, I was back to collecting squirrel bones again. In a game with dozens of different incredible, unbelievable creatures, I had to scour the landscapes to kill boars and birds to find rare drops. It's kind of a strange choice to bring back this particular mechanic when most everything else feels designed to make the user experience a little more smoother. All that said, I feel like Forbidden West gives out skill points really generously, so maxing out almost every skill tree is not as daunting as it may first appear. Every mainline quest, errand, side quest, and cauldron completed gives Aloy a huge chunk of experience points and a handful of skill points. So I always felt like I was progressing. And the beautifully recursive thing about this game is that after the intro area, I wanted to seek out more things to do and keep improving my skills because the storytelling is presented so much more engagingly. So Horizon Zero Dawn borrowed so heavily from its other open world contemporaries that sometimes the game felt derivative. Forbidden West feels much more confident in its storytelling. Yeah, the map is still packed completely full of question marks to investigate. And no, not every question mark is worthy of investigation. But just on a base level, talking to NPCs and viewing cutscenes is staggeringly more enjoyable. Gone are the simple close-ups of characters' faces with the weirdly uncanny valley attached to it. Instead, almost every dialogue interaction with an NPC has blocking and movement and feels much more dynamic. I was blown away by how much more interesting the world felt. This goes hand in hand with the extra work done to make the world and characters feel more memorable than ever. Guerrilla Games created a universe with stunning art direction, and Forbidden West keeps that train rolling. The new tribes and factions feel distinct and interesting, especially the Tenakth, who have really intense face paint and tattoos. Returning characters feel consistently characterized, especially Varl, who I have to say is rocking an excellent beard at first, and then he shaves it for no good reason. Come on, Varl, beard boys for life. I'm not going to shout out the entire cast list per se, but I do want to shout out some of the characters who stuck out to me. Zoe, a member of the Plainsong tribe played by Erica Luttrell, has an incredible stillness and power that contrasts perfectly with Aloy's restlessness. There are a couple of heavy hitter Hollywood actors here who show up and just crush it. Notably, Carrie Ann Moss as the mysterious Tilda and Angela Bassett as Regalia, probably my favorite recurring antagonist in the game. And of course, Lance Reddick returns as Silence, the smuggest dude on the planet who constantly feels like he's playing Aloy at any given moment. I liked him a lot better when he was just a concierge at a hotel. Now he's being a jerk.
Every performance in this game is phenomenal, but this game would be nothing without Ashley Birch as Aloy. Come awards time later this year, she's gonna be nominated for everything under the sun, and we all kind of know it, right? Deservedly so. There's this gruff tension within Aloy throughout the game as she grapples with her role as the sole savior of the world. And a big part of this game is her learning how to ask for help, even as it pains her to do so. And as someone who has been pushed to their limits multiple times over this last decade, Aloy's journey really resonated with me, and Birch's performance is a tour de force.
Now, I want to continue talking about why this performance is so towering, but I can't do so without a big fat spoiler warning. So there's that, okay? Here we go. Another reason why I think Ashley Birch is doing tremendous work here is that she's not just playing Aloy, but playing genetic clone mommy Elizabeth as well, in flashback holograms. But on top of that, she voices another clone, Beta. So essentially, Ashley Birch is voicing Aloy, who is having the internal struggle of recognizing that she must be a leader after a lifetime of being an outcast. Elizabeth, a genius who's tired, demoralized, and constantly dealing with assholes trying to undermine her or steal her work. And Beta, a wide-eyed innocent who is caught up with a bad crowd. All of these performances are nuanced and very believable, which helps make the extremely high concept sci-fi nonsense of the main narrative so much more fun to engage with. Now, I say nonsense very lovingly. Forbidden West's narrative is wild. To be clear, despite what you might think, nothing I'm spoiling is from the late game. All this stuff happens within the first few hours of the main story quest. I knew I was in for some shenanigans when Silence did everything in his power to lure me out to the West Coast Best Coast, but I had no idea what I would be in for by the time the credits rolled. At the beginning of the game, I was trying to solve labor disputes and keep the peace between different warring tribes and factions. Before long, I was fighting the descendants of humans who fled to space thousands of years ago and teaming up with my own clone as I trekked across the country from Las Vegas to Silicon Valley to load files onto my super USB to reboot the entire Earth with the help of a golden glowing Mega Cortana. There is a lot happening in this game, and I love that Forbidden West just f***ing goes for it. Aloy is trying to find a backup for the Gaia program. She eventually finds one and establishes a base of operations, but learns that Gaia won't operate without the help of its subordinate functions. The main thrust of the game is gathering up 3 of those functions by going to specific locations, then bringing the programs back to the main base. After hitting this part of the main quest, the game becomes a semi-directed open world by giving the player 3 big main collectibles to find, but not really gating them off beyond providing suggestions of what level the player should be. The base becomes a safe haven and even starts to feel like a central hub for Aloy's newfound family. Watching Aloy learn to work with others to help her in her journey was a moving experience. The theme of surrounding yourself with friends who you truly trust is always compelling to me. One perk of doing a full completionist run is that scourging around for every little lore nugget helped make the story go down a little more smoothly. It's very easy to feel overwhelmed and occasionally confused by the main narrative, especially if you're playing it over a long period of time. There are threads that are just too easy to lose. I feel extremely privileged to have been able to play this game early, because even though I did have to rush through it to make a video in a timely fashion, I was fully invested in this world for almost a month. There are dozens of text data points in Forbidden West. Part of me thinks that the audio logs and text files are sort of outdated storytelling techniques at this point, but they can also be very effective when done well. Essentially, that's something that I found really striking about this game. The conventions of open world video games are all gathered here, but presented well enough to feel unique. Now, the game is not perfect. There are many interesting side quests that flesh out the world, like solving the mystery of why the Plainsong land gods are slowly dying. And then there's the guy who needs me to take care of his grocery list. For every cool expansion of lore, there's a mind-numbingly dull fetch quest. There are quests where you have to track NPCs, which is still literally following a highlighted breadcrumb trail. Then again, there are just enough new movement options to play to make getting from point A to point B feel really visceral and cool once more. I mentioned the grapple up top, and it is indeed extremely awesome, but the glider, which was advertised heavily in the lead up to the release, is also a blast to use. Does it operate almost exactly like the Breath of the Wild glider? Yes. Is it still super fun to find the highest point you can possibly climb, then leave off of it, gliding majestically through the air? Hell yes. Gliders are awesome, and Forbidden West understands that. I just wish it appeared in the game slightly sooner than it does. In my mind, its arrival signifies the real start of the game, and I say beeline to obtaining it ASAP. And I will say, the swimming, it's not that great. The ocean and freshwater environments look incredible and feels really badass to dodge attacks underwater, but it didn't really click with me 100%, even after finding the Phantom Menace style rebreather mouthpiece. I think if the game had just left the underwater sections as exploration, I would have just felt a little better about the swimming in general, but hey, cool that it's here. Now, I do have one final mechanic spoiler that I have to mention, only because I wish it appeared earlier in the game, and that I had known about it because it would have helped completing it go by that much easier. There is, in fact, a flying mount in this game. The power of flight is here, and it is very freeing. It's a game changer for collectible hunters, but a feature that doesn't unlock until the very end of the game. Now, I understand the reasoning. It feels very much like a late game reward, but it is going to be a little more awkward in the eventual sequel when Aloy is depowered again and can't fly or swim right out of the gate. The landscapes are overall incredibly beautiful, and one of my favorite things about completing this game are the environmental puzzles. From overriding the 5 tall necks to completing all 6 cauldrons, there were so many situations where I had to solve problems by looking at an area from a specific angle. I feel like these exist purely to force players to appreciate the technical mastery on display. And you know what? Hell yeah. Guerrilla did an incredible job presenting a decaying old world side by side with a vibrant new one. I love when a dilapidated structure is contrasted with a cool bunker filled with holograms and glowing screens. The way natural beauty contrasts with harsh metal never really grew old. This ethos extends to some of the more tougher enemy encounters as well, as this game lacks what I would consider, once again, more traditional boss fights. Learning how to navigate the world and spotting grapple points becomes just as important as finding a new favorite weapon. The machines in Horizon Zero Dawn were spectacular, some of the most inventive creatures I've seen ever brought to life. And yeah, I've gone a long time without mentioning the new designs, but it is time to gush because they are truly awesome. There are a few returning favorites, but also a whole new slew of terrifying machines to tussle with. We've got Kangaroo Jack, we've got Mecha Petrie, there's old Spitty, a real mean son of a bitch, and Little Jumper. Charging Chuck is here in 2 different spicy varieties. Big Stompy is a beast and a super fun challenge to overcome. I like that I could pull Kentucky Fried Firebird out of the sky with a vertical trap, and I love that I could ride these velociraptor looking dudes. And then there's just dead ass Lapras just shooting gross water everywhere. There are at least 43 machines total to scan and to add to the Rolodex. Everyone has strengths and weaknesses, and there are even more deadly variants to contend with as well. There is a deep satisfaction to be found in taking time to scan, plan, and execute attacks. Tearing off components feels more necessary in this game than the previous one, as certain machine parts are destroyed when the host dies. I thought the first game had strong Monster Hunter vibes, and Forbidden West goes even further with that idea. I could even consume meals that would grant perks before going out into the field. I took the time to hunt meat, gather flora, and create new recipes. This is a pretty essential feature on higher difficulty levels. But on the other hand, one more tool to manage just for a limited time buff. If you lack the patience to perfectly plan every encounter and just want to get in there and wreck some robot monsters, this game has some really great customization options that lets players play the game how they want to. Now, there are a fair amount of these features that I do not use, but I appreciate that Sony and Guerrilla Games wants everyone to be able to experience this epic story at their own pace. It is remarkable to see a game of this size and scope come out during pandemic times. And to see that, for the most part, Guerrilla Games completely nailed it. I went from not being completely sold at the start of the game to being fully drawn in. But once you complete the game, there isn't much reason to return. Horizon Forbidden West is undeniably gorgeous looking. The gameplay is compelling, and tweaking the difficulty gives players great freedom in approaching combat. I enjoyed playing through this game, and completing the narrative is ultimately a pretty painless experience. If you're extremely thorough as you travel from one plot beat to the next, you'll almost have no trouble earning a platinum trophy, and might even reach 80 to 90% of in-game completion by the time the narrative concludes. As someone who regularly rails against bloated adventures with nothing to offer, I'm happy to say that Forbidden West didn't hit me that way, but so far, it hasn't stuck with me in any particular deep way either. Now, this is not necessarily the fault of the game. I blitzed through it like I was binge watching Squid Game. There are so many other huge games on the docket that I didn't feel as though I could take my time. To Forbidden West's credit, it doesn't demand that you replay it multiple times or have any kind of new game plus for now. I completed things as I went to the best of my ability, so that by the time I reached the end, I had earned all but 2 trophies and had something around 86% of in-game completion. I was basically just missing a handful of data points, which were pretty easy to map out at the end of the day. But there simply isn't any kind of post-game content. There isn't a secret endgame battle or challenge to overcome. There are a handful of conversations to have with a few of my favorite NPCs that wrap up their arcs, but no extra side quests or anything upon completing the game. Maxing out the skill tree is fun and gave me full access to the entire suite of Valor moves and other powerful skills. But it's not like I was taking those fully upgraded skills and doing anything with them. I can't say that I fell completely in love with Machine Strike, the game within the game. It's certainly no Triple Triad or Tetramaster. Challenging and defeating other NPCs to obtain their strike pieces is pretty involved. And I have to say, I tried to hustle through these challenges as quickly as I could. But by the time you defeated all of the Machine Strike masters, you will be burnt out. And if you want to get every skill in the game, you have to earn those skill points by doing the Machine Strike missions. Now, the arena challenges, on the other hand, were a complete blast, the perfect blend of challenging and fun, and provided me that pure combat adrenaline that I so crave. There are 5 ranks to complete with 4 challenges in each rank, with increasingly difficult robots to fight in wild combinations. Finishing a challenge awards arena medals, which I use to purchase the legendary weapons, armors, and coils. Now, these are thrilling fights, and the rewards are totally worth it. Though you don't have to fully complete every challenge to have enough currency to purchase all the legendary gear offered, but doing them all means that you've got everything, so good job. To me, what Horizon Forbidden West is missing on a base level is the ability for the player to challenge themselves outside of the game's parameters. To make an obvious comparison, in Breath of the Wild, there is always something for the player to work towards, even if they've completed the game. You can try and get the Master Sword ASAP, or take on Ganon right away, or make your own insane set of rules to challenge yourself. I think the arena challenges of Forbidden West are the closest thing this game has to feeling that. Now, it is likely that Guerrilla Games and Sony have some kind of DLC content planned out. Zero Dawn's post-launch support was really strong, and there is little reason to believe that there won't be something down the line here. I'd love to see even more wild arena challenges, or an expansion of the flying mount capabilities, maybe even a water mount.
Okay, so when it comes to completing Horizon Forbidden West, there's a lot of gray area stuff that's become a problem for me in this journey so far. Getting the platinum was incredibly easy and very satisfying. I loved it. However, I've been playing this game for about a month now. I got this game very early because of my job at G4 and X-Play, and so I've been fortunate enough to experience it and work on completing it for a while, and I loved it. I've loved every minute of it. I loved being able to just play a game blindly and just enjoy what the game has for me, and hopefully you guys when I share my experience. The problem is, when we get games early, especially in this essence of how they are, with the world being the way that it is, you play games that sometimes don't have patches. Sometimes they're just, the game is not finished in a way. And so while I was completing this game, there were several patches that came out that actually, I think, either ruined my game save or contributed to halting me in getting that 100% completion number in my notebook. So for example, in my notebook, it says, oh, you've done X amount of quests, you've done X amount of things. I've done everything I've had to do in the game, and it's verified because there are corresponding trophies that tell you you did it, but in the notebook, it doesn't count as it being done. There's a lot of moments like this. So in the end, my percentage, my in-game completion ended up being somewhere in the high 90s, but I couldn't actually finish the game completion-wise. I couldn't actually complete the game because of these bugs. And it's a real shame, and a real bummer. And it happens from time to time. It does happen. I've completed hundreds of games, and there has been a handful where no matter how many times and hours and blood, sweat, and tears I've invested into my journey of completing these games, they're just incompletable in the state they're in. So, for everyone out there who's watching this video months from now, years from now, I hope that you go on the journey to get that 100% completion and do it in honor of me, because I'm gonna do it eventually, but I'm gonna do it when they've patched and fixed everything. Because if I spend any more time trying to take my square peg and put in this circle that doesn't work, I'm gonna go crazy. At the end of the day, I'm pretty pissed, but it's the time we live in. I gotta accept it, and I hope you guys enjoy the journey one day when it's fixed.
For Platinum Trophy Hunters, I'd say this is an easy platinum. For Completionists, there's no real reason to farm skill points and max out every skill tree. It's cool, don't get me wrong, but it starts to feel overstuffed by the end. But of course, there's the madman side of me who can't get enough of dumb, hard to find stuff that defines completing big open world games like this. After playing Forbidden West for dozens of hours, completing the narrative and earning the Platinum Trophy, and combing the landscape for collectibles, I did find myself missing a few percentage points. It turns out there were 3 unknown collectibles missing in my inventory that I just had to find, and they were driving me crazy. It wasn't until I asked other folks in the industry what it was to figure out what they were. And what was I looking for exactly? God of War Easter eggs. Now these aren't traceable quests, there's no way to track them down in the game itself, but if you look hard enough you can find these little God of War type dolls spread all throughout the land, and where they're spread out to kind of alludes to God of War's world being around this area. I enjoy when studios show each other love and support, and for one of the most significant PlayStation exclusives of 2022 to reference what will hopefully be another significant PlayStation exclusive releasing in 2022 made me smile in just the right way. So early on in the game, a character in the town of Plainsong tells Aloy that a single seed means little in the infinite cycle of growth and decay. In Aloy's defense, I think this character is totally wrong, as her genetic makeup means that she's literally the key to the survival of life on Earth, right? But the line has stuck with me almost throughout the entire game from then on out. A game is composed of a million moving parts, from the code in the machine to the humans who wrote the script. It takes the work of hundreds of people to make a piece of art like Horizon Forbidden West. And I'm just one dude, a drop in a sea of content creators out there. But I just wanted to say that I appreciate the labor that went into making this game, especially during these unbelievably unprecedented times. Now, I don't mean to wax poetic here, but this is an accomplishment. The game deserves attention, and I genuinely hope it doesn't become buried in the endless flood of hype, not just for this game, but for all the other games out there. Horizon Forbidden West is a feast for the senses. It's stunning on every level technically, and it's extremely well performed. The gameplay is just as tight and as satisfying as the first title, if not even more so than the first game. But, and you guys know, the but always comes. When it comes to completion and the experience of completing the game, there is not much to reward the player beyond the enjoyment of making it through the main campaign and getting that platinum trophy. I loved playing this game, I really did. But I don't think there's a super compelling reason to max everything out in with regards to that in-game percentage meter, considering that at the time of making this video, it's bugged. It's fucking bugged beyond hell. I have put well over 100 hours into this game, and I cannot for the life of me get the game to read 100% completion. So, with all of that in mind, I give this game my completion rating of finish it.
Finish it!